This year marks 47 years since the death of anti-apartheid activist and leader of the Black Consciousness movement, Steve Biko. He died on September 12, 1977 in Pretoria after sustaining multiple injuries at the hands of apartheid police. His life and times is being celebrated on Saturday through music organised by the Centre for Black Thought and African Studies. For more on this, I'm joined by Siyabulela Tonono from the Centre. Appreciate your time. Thanks so much for coming onto the show. We do talk about Steve Biko and remember him with the most incredible of memories. Interesting that in this instance you're choosing music, amongst other things, to celebrate his legacy.
Yes. Primarily, if we remember Biko and Black consciousness broadly, we'll remember that Biko was primarily a leader emerged leader within the student Christian movement. And Black consciousness moved mainly in the 70s and the 80s, mainly through churches and platforms and religious institutions. So part of those religious institutions within churches, Black consciousness took the form of Black theology, which sort of became a way of understanding Christian scriptures in particular ways that affect or in ways that are relevant to the lived and socio-economic realities of Black people. And so if we look at Black consciousness, it is primarily a movement grounded in the experiences of Black people and the daily experiences of Black people. And music is a central part of that experience. So when we think about music, particularly jazz music, jazz music has its roots. Is something that is ancient within South African society. But even when we look at its history, it's the product of African people going into the diaspora all over the world through slavery. And the hymns and the spirituals and the songs that they sang are what resonated and reverberated in jazz music. And so we feel that as the Center for Black Thought and African Studies, we are of the opinion that we cannot celebrate and commemorate the death of Biko and reflect on Black consciousness, Black theology, without centralizing and centralizing music as part of that, particularly jazz music.
Now, I've always been of the impression that the jazz music speaks to those that are mature at heart and not so much the youngsters, right? Now, the messages that I'd imagine we want to put across around Black consciousness are targeted at all members of society. How do young people relate to this, do you think?
I mean, when you think about jazz music, there's emerging young people who are into jazz and jazz music. There are quite a lot of artists that are emerging in the space, not only emerging, but that are popular among young people. And so I think it is particularly a bit of a myth to consider jazz as an elitist kind of old, mature genre of music. However, it is something that is that cuts across all age divides, and so jazz music is very much important and is very much a part of youth culture, and so it's quite important that we recognize that.
So let's talk about that jazz performance that's coming up. Who's involved? Yes. What can we expect?
So on Saturday, the 28th of September, we will be hosting the African Time in Conversation with Black Theology. This is a conversation that looks to bring the intersections between Black consciousness, African time music as performed by award-winning jazz bassist Herbie Tswayedi and the Herbie Tswayedi Quintet. And so in essence, what you can expect is that you can expect live performances by Herbie Tswayedi. Also, Herbie Tswayedi's music will be in conversation with Professor Anthony Reddy of Oxford University, who's an internationally renowned Black theologian, alongside Dr. Lerato Kobe of UNISA. And they will be grappling with what music and jazz music has done particularly in the South African context, in the liberation of Black people, and what it seeks to do in imparting and embodying liberatory praxis within the post-1994 context. And so you can expect an evening of exceptional music and exceptional, insightful conversations on Black theology, reflecting on the nexus between music and liberation. The show will be at the Seth Mukitimi Methodist Seminary, which is in Pietermaritzburg, in Scottsville, Pietermaritzburg. Tickets to the show are available online on a platform called Quicket. You can find tickets on Quicket, and your members of the public are welcome to join this concert.
So it's been 47 years since the passing of Steve Biko. I'm interested to know, has the message shifted or evolved over the years, or is it still this very same message from prior to his death?
The message of Black consciousness has been simple. Has been simple. It has been about the human and acknowledging the humanity of Black people, acknowledging the realities of Black people, acknowledging the cultures, acknowledging and celebrating the heritage of Black people, which for centuries has been denigrated. And so the project of rehumanizing what has the Black subject, which has been for years, for centuries, dehumanized, is a project that is going to be a long-term project. And so the messaging has been the same from the days of Biko, and it's still the same. However, the contexts are changing. Racial capitalism looks differently in 2024 to what it used to look like in 1977 or 1976, for that matter. So there has been a shift in the in how the messaging has been conveyed. However, the Black consciousness has primarily been located at the rehumanizing and celebrating the experiences, celebrating the culture, celebrating the identity of Black people, which has for centuries been denigrated.
So how do we fight this denigration as a people? I'm inclined to think that come September 28th, a grouping of individuals who are pushing an agenda on behalf of a vast number of other Africans or Black people are representing this battle or this fight. Surely there should be means and ways of getting everybody to almost jump on the bandwagon, if you will, and not limit it to a single event periodically.
So this event is in as much as this is part of the work of the Center for Black Thought and African Studies, which is a research center. And so on a more ongoing basis, our work is really about digging into the historical archive of Black people, writing the stories and the contributions of Black people within the Southern African context. And so part of the conversation needs to include a multidisciplinary approach where the arts is used as a platform of furthering the message of Black consciousness. Not only the arts, music, academia, all spaces in which consciousness is shaped. And so this event is not only a single event from our side as the center, but is part of a broader work that is happening. And also, you will notice that the participants who will be at the concert are from diverse spaces, some globally, some nationally. And so it's a diverse kind of work that is multi-located, that is located in multiple sites, and it is the coalescence of that. And so the conversation really is about grounding ourselves in the heritage that we have in our past, and also remembering the sacrifices that have led to the so-called democratic dispensation, but remembering that the liberation of Black people is something that is still necessary. It is something that Fees Must Fall activists have been calling for almost a decade now. It is something that has been called for by generations and generations of other scholars, activists in previous in history, and the context still necessitates the very same liberatory praxis and practices of Black consciousness.
Siyabulela Tonono from the Center for Black Thought and African Studies. Appreciate your time. Thanks so much for coming onto the show.